talent. Something that we've tried to do is we've tried to be very measured about what classes get what crowd control and how much and why it is that they have it or don't have it. You can certainly make the argument that other classes don't really have substantial crowd control like the Paladin or the Warrior, and yet those are still very viable classes. I don't think the class requires crowd control to be viable or fun, but it certainly can be a cool addition. So with the Shaman, we do feel like they bring a lot of group utility, and that's something that we'll kind of continue to focus on. With all the different totems, things like Bloodlust, etc. Shaman's a pretty popular guy to have in the group. So that is something that's potential in the future, but not at level 70.
Hi, I wanted to talk about the Druid tree form. I was kind of just wondering what you guys were thinking when you created that, maybe shed some light on that. It seems to kind of many Druids and myself that the utilizability of that tree form and is kind of limited due to the run speed decrease and the inability to cast all of our restoration spells. Also, when you're in that form, it really perpetuates the idea that you can only be a backup healer. And I was wondering what you guys think about that.
Okay, well, there are a lot of different things to talk about there. Number one, we do plan to extend the number of different things you can cast in free form. So, for example, we do expect you to be able to decurse in the free form, or at least decurse and move energy poison in free form. In addition, the free form, the drawbacks to it are certainly something we would keep evaluating, because the core philosophy there was that we didn't necessarily want every single druid to be in free form all the time while they're healing. We thought it'd be interesting if it was something that you would do kind of on the fly if you wanted to emphasize a different element of healing. And that's part of why you aren't able to cast like the healing touch spells in that form. We really want it to feel different than if you were just in caster form, casting your heals. We don't just want it to feel like healing plus plus. So while we're still trying to stay with that philosophy, I can see reducing some limitations on it.
Okay, next question. Thank you very much, first of all, for addressing some of the pitfalls in some of the classes. That's really important to note. But seriously, Holy Priests, regarding PvE, Nyla and Death and Taxes do not bring Holy Priests to raids. I've got Holy Priests in my guild who are rerolling Warlocks. Comment? Time, something, TSA?
Yeah, that's something that we have seen over time, and it's something that we've kind of been addressing subtly in other ways. This is one of those areas where we have to be very careful not to overcompensate in one direction or another. Something we are doing is we're making some pretty substantial changes to the way that the light well works, also the way that we're continuing to make improvements to the spirit, the circle of healing. But that being said, I think we have to, also look at how it is that the Shadow Priest element has also kind of caused a lot of Holy Priests to shift over to the Shadow. The Shadow Priest really brought a new element in the Burning Crusade with the bringing back mana to party members. Not only that, they also have obviously very viable DPS. So I think that it's not just an issue with the Holy itself, and a lot of times it can be an issue with Shadow being so compelling. It can also be an issue of Paladins and how our raid game, generally speaking, focuses on healing efficiency as being the most important element as far as healing goes, and Paladins really shine there. Yeah. So there are a lot of different factors, and I actually expect us to change a lot of them in a little bit in different directions, and hopefully achieve the outcome.
It's a fairly urgent problem. I've got people seriously quitting the game, including my girlfriend, and if she doesn't play, I don't play, so. Hello. In Warcraft 3, there was a lot of spells and abilities on the hero classes that a couple of them have been implemented on mages with their water elemental. But are there any plans to bring any of the other top level spell abilities, like being able to turn yourself into multiple beings and attack?
Right, like mirror image, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely anytime we're adding new spells and abilities in the game, we always go back and look at Warcraft 3, take a look at the ones that we never did implement into WoW, and evaluate whether or not they're appropriate, whether or not they would work within the World of Warcraft. Sometimes those abilities, they're designed for real-time strategy games, they don't necessarily carry over directly, but in a lot of cases they do. It's just a question of finding the right time and place for it.
Hi. The Red Pally community has been shrinking for a long time, in part due to its huge DPS issues and just not bringing anything to the table, really. I'm wondering what you think is going to happen once the Death Knight class is introduced and that small community is extremely drawn to this new class. I mean, the Red Pally community is already small, it might just disappear completely.
Well,
and no one will mourn its passing.
I don't think that necessarily it's just going to be Red Pallies that are drawn to the Death Knight class, and also I don't necessarily, I mean, if somebody really is attracted to the Death Knight, that's great. It doesn't necessarily damage the Paladin class for, you know, certain Paladins that decide to become Death Knights. But what I do think you'll find is that we plan to give the Retribution Paladins more raid DPS. Something we've always been very leery of is that a lot of the Paladin DPS right now is kind of burst-oriented with the Seal of Command and the Crusader Strike, etc. We have to be careful not to overdo that on the PvP front. But we do feel like we can add their DPS quite a bit on the raid front and do it in ways that work effectively in raid encounters and have it not jeopardize the PvP elements.
Alright, my question
Of course,
is...
a lot of you out there don't want to see Red Paladins, unfortunately.
I do. Okay, my question is with melee raid spots. With the addition of the Death Knight and most high-end BT guilds running with 1 or 2 enhancement shamans, then with Red Paladins, previously we ran with like 6 rogues sometimes in raids. We've always had the same rogues. Now we've gone down to 2 or 3 max. In Northrend, if we're running 25-man raids, what if we only have a spot for one of our rogues that's been playing a rogue for 3 years? It's really going to run into an issue for us. Yeah, if you could address that.
So there are a lot of things at work there. Number one, pre-Burning Crusade to Burning Crusade, our raid size went from 40 to 25. So inevitably that's going to affect how many people you have of any given class on any given raid. So you have almost, half as many people. You can expect at least almost half as many of the same character class in Burning Crusade raids. That being said, we really expect that adding another character class is certainly going to change that kind of group composition. However, in a lot of cases, it will be players that used to play rogues that are now playing Death Knights, or players that are playing other character classes now playing Death Knights. So inevitably, when we add more character classes, it'll shrink the number of any given class in a single raid, but that doesn't actually change the number of people. You're still talking about 25 people that are behind the keyboard. You're not being replaced with a robot and no longer able to play because of that. I think that as long as we stick with our core philosophy that every class brings something important to the raid and really kind of have some way to shine, that we'll still be able to see rogues being viable.
Also, I play on a realm that could be considered like almost a ghost server. Every guild in there is like stuck on the first boss of SSC or TK. We're the only guild in BT and Hydral. Do you guys have any plans on merging low pop servers where you can't get a 5-man and it takes you 5 hours to find one?
Well, that would certainly be a question for our operations guys, but we do look at the realm sizes, and wherever necessary, we'll kind of take measures needed to make sure that the populations stay at a very playable level.
We'll have time for about 3 more questions.
So, as talent trees deep and hybrids become less capable of hybrid play, they spec into one thing and that's the only role they can effectively do. What do you plan to do about this?
Well, the ways we address that, I guess the primary way that we address that is to ensure that as you move down a given tree, you gain benefits to different kind of hybrid ways of playing. I guess an example would be in the feral tree, we have the talents that kind of give you a benefit to your healing based on your strength, that sort of thing. So we do want to make sure that the hybrids still feel like hybrids as much as possible, even though you are specializing in one area of being that hybrid. So our general approach is that in the talents themselves, you'll be able to pick up things to allow you to do your hybrid roles as you go down. What we found over time is that we really need to package those hybrid abilities with things that continue to emphasize the specialization that you're selecting. Anytime we separate them, players tend to skip those kind of hybrid talents and go along with the others, and so even though they're there, nobody's using them. So it takes a lot of finesse to get those talents just right so that players take them and get advantage out of them and still feel like hybrids.